Good evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. And tonight we're going to talk about confusing times ahead. And for all you dog lovers out there, I thought these were some really appropriate pictures. The way the temperatures have been swinging from very warm, near record warmth, along the East Coast, especially the Mid-Atlantic. And then the next day, it's winter time. The way these temperatures are swinging 30 to 40 degrees in some cases, this is what you get. You get a very confused face. And I threw some dogs in here to represent that confusion, so I hope you get a little bit of humor out of that tonight here on the title. Um, if you love dogs, you definitely know when they kind of tilt their head when you talk to them in a certain tone. It's really funny to watch. All right, so I'm going to start tonight's video by taking a look at what we have seen so far this winter. I made the winter forecast video out back in, I believe it was September, October of 2018, last September, October. And, I really didn't anticipate, I'll be honest, I really didn't anticipate the way this winter is turning out. All right. And these are some of the factors that really have me looking like this dog right now, kind of tilting my head or scratching my head, trying to figure out what in the world is going on here. All right, so the first point is, and I have some graphics for the El Nino, I have some graphics for the polar vortex, the latest images, but the El Nino, it's just never truly materialized. We have a lack of southern energy. The subtropical jet stream was very active in November, and also even into the early parts of December. It was a very active subtropical jet stream. We had a lot of southern low pressure storm systems riding that subtropical jet. We finished out the year in the southeastern cities like Atlanta, places in Georgia, into the Carolinas, with just an unbelievable high amount of annual precipitation in 2018, because there's just one storm after one storm. November into early part of December, we had a very active subtropical jet. So we had a ton of southern energy. And I'll show you the image here, what a typical El Nino looks like. And, going in already in November and early December, I was thinking, wow, this winter is going to be pretty active as far as the southern storm track. Well, that just hasn't happened. We haven't. The subtropical jet stream has gone inactive recently, from mid-December to early February. We just haven't seen any in the way of any southern energy to create those coastal storms, or as some people know on the East Coast, nor'easters. It's really interesting to see how this has turned out. Now, point two is El Nino is behaving like La Nina. And again, I'll show you the map here in a minute. Typical El Nino versus a typical La Nina winter. With La Nina, you typically have a wetter Pacific Northwest and even Midwest. All right. We've had a lot of moisture lately, especially with a negative Pacific North American pattern. We have a huge trough in the western U.S. We're having storm after storm after storm just barrage the Pacific Northwest down to California, down the West Coast. And, that is... The northwestern U.S. part is more like a La Nina, and the midwestern part more like a La Nina, where you get above normal snow totals in the Midwest. And we're seeing a lot of storm tracks going same repetitive pattern all winter going into the Midwest. After, about mid-December on, it's been a Midwestern storm track. Up until then, like I mentioned in the first bullet, we had a very active subtropical jet and a very active southern jet stream, a lot of storms further south. The sudden stratospheric warming that leading to the polar vortex displacement, which typically leads to a prolonged period of below normal temperatures in the eastern United States. And research has proven this. I give a lot of props to Dr. Judah Cohen, and then, there's others out there as well that have done extensive research on sudden stratospheric warmings, where the stratosphere warms to incredibly warm levels, and usually then it takes about 30 days after the polar vortex kind of splits off, you displace a huge chunk of Arctic air from the far Arctic North regions into the lower 48. You know, with this whole polar vortex displacement, we had a nice lobe of the polar vortex situated over eastern Canada, temporarily came down into the upper Midwest, resulted in a really crazy, cold, frigid period. But then it's repositioned itself out over the western U.S., which in most cases with the polar vortex, you typically have below normal temperatures in the eastern U.S., and it's over a longer time period, typically 3 to as much as 6 weeks. You have a period of colder than normal temperatures in the east. That's not happening right now. And then the teleconnections, I talk a lot about that when I do my winter, the winter forecast video in the fall. The teleconnections are contradicting each other. All right, I mentioned the word destructive interference. Okay, so you get a negative Arctic oscillation, for example, with a negative Pacific North American pattern, and then you get Mad-Julian oscillation, MJO warm phases, and a polar vortex split. So these work contrary to each other. For example, the negative Arctic oscillation and the negative Pacific North American pattern. That negative Arctic oscillation says I should have a trough and below normal temperatures in the eastern U.S. The negative Pacific North American pattern says no, no, no. You should have a trough in the western United States and colder than normal temperatures out there. And then the Mad-Julian oscillation, the warm phases, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've been stuck in those areas of the Mad-Julian oscillation with the convection in the Pacific Ocean. And what happens in the Pacific, it does impact the weather in the lower 48 where we live, because everything moves from west to east. Now, with the MJO warm phase, that usually promotes a ridge and warmer than normal temperatures in the east, but a polar vortex split with a lobe of the polar vortex over eastern Canada, that supports below normal temperatures in the eastern United States. All right, and then finally, again, the repetitive Midwestern storm tracks, typical of a La Nina winter. And then to kind of end this slide, model chaos from run to run. We have seen, I can't remember a winter where the models have done so poorly, the operational models. The European is usually the superior model, the American GFS. I know we had a government shutdown in there for a little bit, which, may have impacted the American GFS. I read some articles on that. May be impacting its performance during the shutdown. But, even since the shutdowns ended, one model run will look warmer. The next model run looks completely different and cold. So anything beyond, 3 to 4 days this winter, you just can't trust it on the operational models. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm not into modeling of the numerical weather prediction. I'm not into that. So I'm not really sure what's happening there. But it's been a very poor performing winter for the models, and they are all over the place. All right. So let's just talk a little bit about the polar vortex and then the typical El Nino and La Nina conditions. Now, the polar vortex, the coldest temperatures have shifted to the west. See this black circular area on the slide? That's where the core of the cold went. We had extremely frigid air, near record historic breaking cold in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, in Iowa. We almost had, I think the one in Illinois actually stood a new state record in Illinois of negative 38 degrees Fahrenheit for an actual low temperature. And, the past research, as I'm noting here, by Dr. Judah Cohen et al., has shown that in most cases, the coldest temperatures remain over the eastern U.S. after polar vortex splits over a lengthy time period, on the order of 4 to 6 weeks. And we just haven't seen that. Instead, this winter, we've seen a frigid cold outbreak over the upper Midwest and the eastern U.S. We've seen that move over towards western Canada, the circled area here on the map. And that polar front jet stream, the jet stream then reconfigures itself to a troughing pattern, a negative P&A pattern over the western United States with multiple storms barreling into the Pacific Northwest down to California. So, this has been an incredible winter. This has been one heck of a learning experience, I'll be honest with you. Let's move on here. So this is what a typical El Nino weather pattern looks like. So you notice how on the left part of the image, the jet stream is splitting. So you have the purple line there represents a subtropical jet stream. It's very active. So during El Nino weather pattern, you'd have above normal rainfall in Southern California, and you have these storm systems moving into Southern California, and then moving across Arizona, New Mexico, into Texas, into the Gulf Coast states. So you have, wetter than normal conditions in Southern California, wetter than normal conditions in the southeast, and with that, you get a lot more storms there along that purple line, that subtropical jet stream, and then those move up the east coast. And the white line represents, that whitish yellowish line represents the polar front jet stream. So you get these occasional shots of cold Arctic air that come into the troughs, the long wave troughs on the east coast. And so you have a lot of storminess on the eastern seaboard, and you get above normal snow in the mid-Atlantic, up through Pennsylvania. Sometimes when these two jet streams merge, you get really big storms because you're basically causing air to rise much more quickly. And you get a dry weather pattern out over the Pacific Northwest. Montana, Washington, or Oregon, into Wyoming, there's an upper level ridge situated there with the split jet stream. This is kind of what the winters look like. I have to be honest here. Especially recently, where we have the blocking high pressure is situated, it's ridging up into Alaska. You have, this is a La Nina winter. So we were predicting an El Nino winter based on the sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific, right? But instead we're getting weather like this, where you're wetter than normal in the Pacific Northwest, Washington and Oregon, where you have a lot of storminess. You're drier over the southern U.S., which we have seen a considerable drying trend since about mid-December. And then you get much wetter conditions over the Midwest and over the Ohio Valley. And in the Mid-Atlantic is warmer than normal. This favors, La Nina weather pattern favors more of a ridge off the southeast coast and much warmer, drier conditions for the Mid-Atlantic in the southeast in general. And this is where, look where the cold is centered on a typical La Nina winter. It's centered back into the northern plains, Minnesota and the Dakotas, into Montana, into western Canada. And that's exactly what is going on right now. So El Nino has not arrived. At least the conditions associated with it have not happened this winter. All right, so let's move on now to a discussion on the teleconnections forecast. I talk about this a lot in the videos, but these teleconnections, this is more in line with the analog forecasting method, where you look back at past weather patterns and you look at these teleconnections and you see, okay, I'm going into phase 8, for example, on the Madden-Julian oscillation, and then I look here on the maps here on the right-hand part of the slide, and I look at phase 8 and I go, oh, there's blue shading there. That's below normal temperatures for the eastern United States. Or if I'm in phase, let's say phase 5, I look at the image here on the right, the temperature composites for January, February, and March, and I see an orangish shading. That means the temperatures must be above normal, right? So this is the current teleconnections forecast. We look back at teleconnection patterns to kind of the analog forecasting method to look back at past teleconnections and generally what they basically determine what the future weather will be. That's what we're looking at here. So the image on the left is showing you the latest Madden-Julian oscillation forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. They're the ones that post these images regularly, so we're always checking their site out, Climate Prediction Center. And anyway, the green line shows that we're currently in 6, heading to 7 very shortly over the next day or two. And then the small circular area there in the image on the left, that's your origin. Okay. So the further the green line is away from that inner circle, that means that the Mad-Julian Oscillation is more active and it's more amplified. So this is an ensemble forecast. All these yellow lines represent all the different forecast ensemble members. And basically we look at the ensemble forecasting and say, okay, if all these yellow lines are fairly close together, we have a high confidence that this is going to happen. The further apart the lines get, which you'd expect further out in time, the less certain the future conditions will be. So the green line is kind of like the average of all the ensemble members. So the green line is the NCEP Global Ensemble Forecasting System. So that's the official forecast from NOAA, the green line. And it's showing us in 6 right now. If I look on the right-hand image, phase 6, that's very mild for the eastern United States in January, February, and March. We're going into 7 shortly, within a couple days. Look at the image on the right. I still have the temperature composite. I still have a little of an orange shading there for phase 7. So I'm still slightly above normal in my temperatures in phase 7. The further out it gets from that inner little circle, the center of this diagram on the left, the more amplified, more active Mad-Julian Oscillation is. So you notice how in phase 7, there's a straight line that goes further out, closer to the number 7. And then watch how the green line wraps around into phase 8 over time. Now this is the forecast out through February 21st. So phase 8, look at phase 8 on the temperature composites on the right. The blue shading indicates colder than normal temperatures across the east. So we get to phase 8. If we were to go to phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, those are all cold phases of the Mad-Julian Oscillation. So we'd expect below normal temperatures. So we're expecting the Mad-Julian Oscillation to be very active over the next couple weeks. And it's very amplified as well, and it's going to phase 8, which is colder temperatures across the eastern United States. If you look at phase 2 and phase 3, you see the blue colors almost over the whole United States. So we are moving towards, for the eastern United States and the mid-Atlantic, a colder phase MJO. Okay. This is the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation forecast. And the AO, Arctic Oscillations on the left, the North Atlantic Oscillations on the right. Here's the other thing we just haven't seen this winter, is there's been no high latitude blocking over Greenland. There really hasn't. The Arctic Oscillation, there's even a later image than this, than what I'm showing you. The AO is positive now. You see all those red lines there on the image on the left? That shows you, there's a 0 line there. Once those red lines go above the 0 line, we're in a positive state in the AO. Once those red lines go below that 0 line, that means we're in a negative state of the Arctic Oscillation. Okay. Same thing applies here on the right-hand image with the North Atlantic Oscillation. But AO is positive right now, which is really incredible. It spiked back up positive, but it is going to trend negative beyond mid-February. Some of these red lines, the image on the left, show it dipping back down below the 0 into negative territory. The image on the right, North Atlantic Oscillation. This is big as far as East Coast weather because when this thing goes negative, the North Atlantic Oscillation, NAO, then we have high latitude blocking into Greenland, which then will result in a trough deepening, being more amplified along the East Coast. And if we get storms to develop, they tend to work their way up the coast and not just go out to sea. They kind of hug the coast. So right now the NAO is positive, but it is also projected to trend negative beyond middle February. Okay. Here's the Pacific North American forecast. Now this is crazy right now, right? So we're in a fairly mild phase of the Mad-Julian Oscillation right now, and the Pacific North American I tell you, this has gone negative. When you have a negative PNA, the image on the right, the composite temperature anomalies, shows, you see the legend there on the bottom there, the blues and the aqua colors, the greens, those generally indicate negative values or below normal temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit. And then the white areas is normal temperatures and the yellow areas is above normal. So with a negative Pacific North American pattern, that means we have a trough and below normal temperatures in the west and ridging, especially over the southeast and mid-Atlantic states, and above normal temperatures. And we've seen this lately. We have really seen this. Great example today in the Norfolk area. Temperatures were getting up to 74, 75 degrees. The normal high for this date in February is only 50 degrees. So we have spiked 20 to 25 degrees above normal. All right, so we have a pretty, the trough is dug in pretty well out in the western U.S. right now, and it's bringing a lot of storm systems off the Pacific. Again, equal and opposite reactions. I talk about it a lot, but what goes up must come down somewhere else, and this is where we're at right now. We have a negative Pacific North American pattern. By the way, this is in the longer range forecast to go more positive by the third week of February. Now, let's roll into some of the forecast charts. This is the forecast for tomorrow, Friday, the 8th of February, 2019. And these are thickness charts, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. And you can see their stamp of the upper right-hand image, tropicaltidbits.com. The blue dashed lines indicate colder air masses, thickness values, basically. The lower the thickness value, the colder the air mass. So tomorrow morning, there's a cold front, fairly strong cold front that's approaching the mid-Atlantic. You see a lot of cold coming in. Excuse me, a lot of cold coming in. 1043 high pressure system over North Dakota. And there's a lot of cold air coming down the front side of that high. We got lowering thickness values behind the cold front. So, what we're expecting is a strong cold front to move through the mid-Atlantic tomorrow on Friday, the 8th of February. It's going to usher in colder temperatures. How cold are we talking? By Saturday, we're looking at temperatures with highs only in the lower to middle 40s across southeast Virginia. Incredible thickness fall from 567 decameters down to 540 decameters. We're actually going to have a 1040 plus high, 1040 millibar plus high coming down from Canada, and this is finally going to flatten the ridge somewhat that's been so persistent this week and producing this incredibly warm weather. And you can see the thickness values really do come down. It's going to be a cold weekend. We're looking at a 30-degree temperature drop between Friday, tomorrow, before the front moves through, and Saturday. So highs only in the lower to middle 40s on Saturday, as well as Sunday. Sunday, we may get into the upper 40s by that point. Then we're expecting rain to return on Monday, 11 February 2019. The high pressure you see here on the image on the right, the blue H, that's going to slide off the coast by Sunday evening. And then we're going to have a wave of low pressure or a new storm system come in, and it's going to produce some rain. As high pressure moves offshore, an area of low pressure forms along the frontal boundary, and then on the image on the right, you see that little blue shading in Virginia? That's snow. There's frozen precip mix into the Piedmont area. You got a 1042 high pressure system, 1042 millibar high, situated over eastern Canada. The clockwise flow around that high generally results in colder northeast wind flow at the low levels, which tends to keep colder air, it's called cold air damming, generally locked in east of the Appalachians. So the precip may start off as a wintry mix or even a little light snow over inland locations of Virginia back towards the Appalachians. But even there, we expect the system, the warm air advection to come in, warmer air to move in, and that's going to change over to rain. So we're not expecting a major winter storm with this one on Monday and Tuesday. Just a lot of rain. Here you go. Temperatures are mild again by Wednesday, the 13th of February 2019. There's a huge swath of green on the maps here. That's your rainfall. Right along the next approaching cold front. New cold fronts coming in from the west. We have a 982 millibar fairly deep low pressure system over Lake Superior moving into eastern Canada. And the counterclockwise circulation around that is going to start dragging some colder air from the Midwest towards the Mid-Atlantic. And we do expect the frontal passage to move through by Wednesday evening, the 13th of February. That's the way it looks right now. So we'll have some rain Monday, Tuesday, still potential for more rain Wednesday across the Mid-Atlantic. As I mentioned, it may start as a little bit of snow with a cold air wedge in place, with colder low-level winds from the northeast, east of the Appalachians at the onset, but it's going to go all to rain, even all the way up in New England again. It's been a crazy winter up in New England, too. had much snow at all, especially in the bigger cities. And then for your planning purposes, looking out to Valentine's Day. Okay, so the cold front moves through, moves off the coast, and then what we're expecting is that nice high pressure system from Iowa to really start moving towards the mid-Atlantic. And by the evening, Valentine's night, we expect the high pressure system to be situated over Ohio, again producing some colder temperatures. Highs back into the 40s again briefly for Thursday for Valentine's Day, cold and dry. Now, the longer range, the models have hinted to being more active again, a more amplified. Now, this pattern is real interesting because there's cold air available. The question really is will the trough become more amplified over time? With the Madden-Julian oscillation going to phase 8 and being fairly active, and later on in the month, even beyond these charts, this is the 16th of February, that's next Saturday. Even beyond this time period, the Arctic oscillation and North Atlantic oscillation is going to get negative. So the question is can we get everything to line up? But you can see there's another storm system moving in towards the mid-Atlantic by the 16th, the following weekend. Not this weekend, but the following weekend after Valentine's Day. Mid-February, we got a new system coming in. Again, you got a cold high over Canada, and that's resulting in snow all the way down the spine of the Appalachians to the east of those Appalachian Mountains. Some snow over the Midwest, into Pennsylvania, into New York State. A new storm system moving into the Pacific Northwest again. I just want to really preface this by saying a more amplified trough could potentially drag down colder air, resulting in multiple winter storm threats somewhere in the mid-Atlantic area. All right, so something we'll keep an eye on, but I tell you, this winter I keep saying that, and it's just amazing the way the atmosphere is actually behaving. All right, and then here's the other thing I want to really point out. With this possibility, we know the western United States has continued to be active through the period. We got storm system after storm system barreling into the Pacific Northwest. Some of these storm systems are then dropping south into California, which is great news for California because they need the rains, especially the mountain snows, where that could be, when that melts in the warm season, that's your drinking water. So it's really a good blessing out there for Californians. Question is, we got these cold highs to the north, 1030 millibar plus highs from basically Alberta into central Canada, and they're just kind of sliding into New England. So that's going to result in some reinforcing shots of cold air. Now, I don't like the looks of the models because it's not really digging a very deep trough. For example, the 540 thickness line is situated over the mid-Atlantic in the area just south of DC on the image on the left. And again on the right, also just around the DC area, Washington, DC area. So as far as getting a good winter storm in the mid-Atlantic, we need a deeper trough to go along with this more active storm track. The question too is with the high pressure system situated over central Canada, New England, does that mean the storm systems are going to take more of a southern route and go underneath the highs? and here's the questions I have at the bottom of the images. Will the pattern become more amplified over the east, with an MJO phase 8 possibly going into a phase 1? Can we get all of these to go together? MJO phase 8, a negative Arctic oscillation, a negative North Atlantic oscillation, and a possible high latitude blocking into Greenland by the third week of February. Cold high pressure systems are setting up over the northern U.S., like I mentioned. Those reinforce the colder air. Bottom line is will the air be cold enough for the mid-Atlantic to see wintry precip? That is the question in the video tonight. So it's a very active pattern. We got a lot of systems moving into the western U.S. If we get deep enough trough or this cold to sag just a little further south, let's say into the Carolinas, we perhaps could have wintry weather further south. And in one of my previous videos, I showed you how February snows can still happen. So here are the final thoughts I have tonight. Here's my most pressing question. Is winter over? And that's a really good question. I've been thinking about that for the last 2 weeks, looking at these operational models and how things just aren't working. They're not aligning for those of us that love cold weather and getting any kind of snow. Um, I don't believe it's over. I don't. I think the Mid Atlantic is still going to see its periods of colder temperatures followed by brief mild spells. There's going to be warm ups in between these. This is a very progressive pattern. This is not one that's locked in place. Now, most of the teleconnections, as I already previously talked about, the MJO phases going to colder phases, Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, all this working towards favoring cold in the east. But you know what? That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Just like we're seeing this winter, El Nino is not behaving like El Nino. All right. So, question is can we get a more amplified pattern? Can we get a more amplified pattern to where we can knock that southeast ridge down? Because that southeast ridge right now, it continues to really rule all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. It's just totally influencing the pattern. This cold air is trying to come in here, but it's running into the big bully. I call the southeast ridge a big bully because it's not moving out of the way. Who wants snow? I know it's kind of mixed answers, but I know some people really would like to see at least one snowfall at Hampton Roads this winter, because we just have not seen the right pattern. Now, this pattern that I'm showing you tonight with the charts, it has the potential to produce wintry precip across the Mid-Atlantic. There's no doubt about it. It can. But the timing of cold temperatures and the moisture must align in order for it to happen. Those teleconnections must align to be more constructively productive. Right? Additionally, teleconnections must converge, like I mentioned just previously. Those teleconnection patterns must converge and work together, vice offsetting each other. And this just goes down like anything in life. Timing is everything. And then after record-breaking warmth across the Mid-Atlantic this week, colder temperatures are expected this weekend, the 9th and 10th of February. We're only expecting high temperatures in the 40s. We could actually have nighttime lows drop into the upper 20s, below freezing across southeast Virginia on Sunday morning, the 10th. Now, mild air is coming back. You can only hold it down for so long. That southeast ridge is going to pop its head up again. If you're a winter weather fan like me, you're going to say that southeast ridge is popping its ugly head back up again. But milder air is set to return 11th to the 13th of February before the next drop in temperatures. We're going to get that rain ahead of the cold front. And then we're going to have a nice drop in temperatures by Valentine's Day, looking cold and dry for anybody who's got plans out there. And then there are multiple storm threats. I mean, you can see it on the charts tonight. There's a lot of action in further south. You see it starting with Monday, February 11th. Okay, you see that swath of green across the Mid-Atlantic. You have a little bit of blue because of the cold air wedging, where a precip may start off further inland and up to northern Virginia, closer to the mountains. It may start off as a little bit of a rain-snow mix, possibly maybe a little light snow, going all to rain. All right, so you see the system coming off, and then it dries out for Valentine's Day, and then boom, the 16th of February, another storm system into the Mid-Atlantic. Then we move out to the 21, 22 February. Look at the moisture. You see, if we can get the connection from Southern California across the Gulf Coast, then we're in business a little bit more because we need those systems to be into Southern California, into Baja, move across into the Gulf, or right along the Gulf of Mexico, and then come up the East Coast. But we're just not seeing that. But you can see there's a lot of precip. The pattern is getting wetter over time. So yes, there are multiple storm threats in the next 10 days as cold highs set up to the north, frontal boundaries set up around the area. Again, here's the big question. Will that upper trough get stronger? If it does, if it digs out more, then the front will be pushed further south. The colder air will come further south. And, we could have wintry precip in that case. But if you get too strong of a high that comes south, it'll actually shove the moisture all the way down further south, and the Mid-Atlantic will just be cold and dry. So it's an amazing balancing act to get the winter storms in this area. And it seems like it's extra difficult this winter. Well, we can expect a lot of temperature swings to continue. We're talking on the order of plus or minus 20 to 30 degrees, as the Mid-Atlantic is the battleground between winter and spring. The seasons are already battling out in early February. We have spring with that southeast ridge poking up going, yeah, I'm going to rule I'm going to take over and influence the weather in the Mid-Atlantic, and then you have these occasional cold shots come in and say, not so fast. It's February and it's still wintertime. So we're going to be in that battleground area where, you can have a frontal system in the area where it could come down as a cold front, return as a warm front, and you might have 20 to 30 degree temperature swings from one day to the next. So there's a lot of volatility in the temperature patterns. And then the models in the long range, like I mentioned earlier, beyond 5 days, honestly, the performance has been so poor. The models beyond 5 days have been extremely unreliable. Those operational models. Whenever there's a lot of volatility or these kind of temperature changes, for example, we can expect a lot of uncertainty in the operational models. There's a lot for the models to process. They're trying to figure out these changes themselves. Sometimes these changes are so quick the models don't pick up on it. All right, that wraps things up tonight. Spot on Weather. I certainly hope you enjoyed the video. This is a way you can reach us at Spot on Weather. Threw up a couple more like tilted dog heads here, dog faces, because this is exactly how I feel tonight with this weather pattern. I mean, honestly. But anyway, you can contact us at Spot on Weather. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Of course, you're watching this on YouTube. So we also are on the YouTube channel and on Instagram, as well as a Weebly website. I have not done a blog for a while on the Weebly website, but hopefully I'll get to one again soon. Again, really appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. I wish you a very happy Friday tomorrow. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you have a super weekend. That wraps things up tonight. Spot on Weather. If we're not spot on, we're not doing it right. And hopefully we'll be able to tilt our head back to where we're not looking so confused like these dogs. Hopefully the weather will finally decide. We can get to a pattern that actually is somewhat consistent. All right, that wraps things up. Everybody have a great Thursday evening.